Good evening. Welcome to We the Village, produced by Ron Hall, and I'm your host, Sharonda Allen. I am here with Kelly O'Blennis Henry. She is the author of a book called Miracle. It is illustrated by Nicole M. Rock. So, Kelly, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I'm from Rockland County, New York, a small village called Hilburn. The joke is it's the best kept secret in Rockland County because it's such a small village with where everyone pretty much knows each other and looks out for each other, and it's a very small town. And that's where I was born and raised, and now am raising my 3 children as well.
Lovely. So, what is your profession?
I am a teacher. This is my 18th year teaching. When I first started, I was a special ed teacher. So I had grades, first grade through 6th grade. And then after 5 years, I took a chance and resigned from special ed and went into regular elementary education. So I could have my own classroom and just feel more at home with the children in my class instead of the small groups. And I really miss it, but I really enjoy having my own classroom, and this is going on 18 years, so
Nice.
it's exciting, and it's always a challenge, but exciting.
Nice. And you know, I'm an educator as well, and I've been in education since '95. I started subbing in '95. Nobody would ever believe that. But let me ask you, why did you choose education as a career?
Well, it was very funny because when I first went into college, my major was medical technology.
Oh my goodness.
And I loved, the sonograms and doing, looking at the pictures on sonograms. So I thought that was going to be my route. And then halfway through the semester, I said to myself, what am I doing? So I always babysat children, loved being with children. So it was just my path and my journey. And so I switched majors halfway through and went into education. It was the best choice ever because I love going to work, I love what I do, and I just hope that my own children can find that same love of their career. So.
And you know what's so interesting? I said, because I have a similar journey.
Really?
I was supposed to be a doctor, and I was a bio major my first 2 years of college. Then I had a racist experience, and one of my sociology professors said, hey, why don't you do sociology? Since it's the science of society. And I said, I want to fix society. I want to do something to improve things. And as I was a substitute teacher, I realized that the way to improve society was through education.
Absolutely.
If I would create citizens, if I would have that impact on young people early on in their formative years, I could really have an impact on improving society and improving people.
Absolutely.
So it's so funny that I was going to go into medicine and you're into medical technology, and it's a beautiful thing that we found what really works and what would be very helpful and effective for the youth, for our communities.
Absolutely. Yes.
So do you teach where you were raised?
I am in the district we have my town of Hilburn go to the Suffern School District. So it's the Ramapo Central School District, and I went through as a child myself, so it was a little funny to be back in the elementary school that I walked through as a child. So I am in the same district that I was taught in as a child.
Wow, that must be fun.
Definitely interesting.
So now what is your educational background, or what are your degrees in?
I have my elementary ed is birth through 6th grade, and my special education background is K through 12, and I have my master's in special ed as well. So I went through with a cohort group and just went right on through my master's, which was, looking back, it was tough, but it was the best decision I could have made.
Great. Now, let me ask you, where did you get your education?
My undergraduate was at St. Thomas Aquinas College in Spark Hill, New York, and my master's was at the College of New Rochelle. In New Rochelle, New York.
So you didn't attend an HBCU like at all first?
No.
Okay.
I went to a private school, which I'm still, it's embarrassing to say, but still paying loans from my private school. Master's is all paid for, but I definitely, and that's been a big, issue, but I wanted to make sure I got through, so I would, do what I had to do as far as the loans and, the deferment and all that great stuff with the loans that you have to deal with.
Yeah, well, there's always a trade-off because it's like either, tussle with the loans and have this great career where you can make great impact on people's lives, or not have the loans. And I don't want to speak disparaging against anything else, but I think, unfortunately, our system is set up that way. But I would say it's worth it because the impact that we make is just so important for young people.
One of my students' parents gave me a plaque that said, teaching not in it for the income, in it for the outcome. And I definitely live by that. And I know I probably could be doing so much more as far as income, but it's just what I love to do, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So,
excellent, excellent. So let me ask you, what grades and what subjects are you currently teaching?
I'm currently a first grade teacher.
First grade.
And going back to first grade, I was in second grade the last few years. And I teach all the subject areas, so they go to their specials, music, art, gym. But I teach from handwriting to reading, math, science, social studies. And it's a full day. And they're definitely wiped out as am I at the end of the day.
Well, I actually teach high school social studies, and I love it. I enjoy it because I love history, and I'm able to present it to my students where they love it.
That's great.
And I'm just so grateful that I can stick to that. Those topics of right now world history and African American history. And I'm certified for elementary, but I find for myself my niche has been the older kids, and you are a saint for dealing with those first graders. I'm so out of that phase. I don't know if I could do that again. But let me get to this wonderful book. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, that definitely had to be my firstborn, who is now 21 years old. When he was 4 years old, so 17 years ago, he had just walking through the woods behind my grandmother's house, his great-grandparents, he found a rock that in his mind he thought was the last dinosaur egg to ever exist. So he had this feeling that he was responsible for this egg, and he had to do anything and everything he could to take care of it and be the best, parent to this dinosaur egg before it hatched. So there was one stormy night that he insisted upon us going out into the rain and finding this dinosaur egg. I tried to persuade him otherwise.
This is the stormy night.
And he insisted that we go out and search for this egg. So we went on an adventure, to say the least, and it was really interesting because this was a story that I kept passing down orally through storytelling, which in my background with the Native background and African American roots, that was just what it was. You always share your stories and tell them to family members, to friends. And it was something that I continued on telling and retelling, that I felt that, this may be something that I want to share with the world and, pass it on not only between family and friends, but to anyone that would possibly like to hear a small moment in my life that I wanted to bring to life. So it was definitely an interesting story because at the end you'll see that Anthony, all along I thought he had this great imagination, and which he did. However, he at the end reminded me that you do know that dinosaurs are extinct. So he was playing along as I was. So cute. So it was definitely a little twist at the end, and but it's a fun read, and I just hope many more people enjoy it and through the years to come. So
that is so creative. I have one daughter, and when she was very young, she would have her things with her imagination, and what I think is so great, and I always reflect on this show, Muppet Babies.
Yes.
They would go into this big, crazy montage of all this imagination, and, they'd have all these adventures. And I think it's important that our kids use their imagination.
Absolutely.
And that we play into it because it helps them to generate stories in their creativity.
Absolutely.
It helps them with higher order thinking. It helps them to be witty and clever and quick on their feet and, bring adjectives and to
Absolutely.
explore, and they make neurological connections. I think that's important. But you also mentioned something else about your heritage.
Yes.
Can you give, and you talked about the book and the storytelling, can you give me a little more information about your background culturally?
Yes, I am a Native American. I'm a descendant from the Ramapo Lenape Nation, and I have also African American roots as well as we're Bermudian. So I'm a mixture of many different nationalities, and I have a lot of heritage and culture. So as a child, I was out in the powwow circle dancing, doing my fancy shawl dancing, as well as part of the Black History program at my middle school growing up, and through the years as a teacher, getting myself involved in that as well. And my children are African American, Native American, Jamaican. So it's definitely, it's just a wonderful mix of many different cultures. And in my culture as a child, we would sit around and tell stories, and I would listen to my grandparents telling stories. And through the years, we continue to tell those same stories to my children. So it was just a matter of, passing stories on from generation to generation, and that's just how it was done orally. And that's why I wanted to make sure I kind of got one of those little small moments in my life down in a book and in print, so that it was not only something that I could share, but my children could share with their children when they have children, and continue that cycle as well.
I think that's beautiful, because I think heritage is very important. It's great that you have a connection with your Native American culture and the traditions. I have Cherokee on my mother's side and Seminole on my father's side, but I don't have the same familial interactions and connections with it. And but my grandfather, he was pretty much attempting to share various elements of his Native American ancestry, and our kids need to know that. There's a wonderful book, African Native American, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it.
I have heard.
Oh, great.
Yes.
That book talks about people like us who we are African American, but we also have Native American ancestry. And, a lot of tribes have recently said, well, if you're Black, you can't really claim your Native heritage or ancestry, which is really, disturbing.
Right.
Because, that leaves us out of the benefits of, tribal membership. Absolutely. And the lineage and the heritage,
right.
But others are allowed to claim their ancestry. And as far as like even my Seminole ancestry, that is such a mixture of the Native Americans in Florida and the African Americans who didn't go north on the Underground Railroad, but went south into Spanish territory.
Right.
So, we have to share those stories as well.
Absolutely. And I know at one point my oldest son, he, was asked about his heritage, and he at times would leave out the fact that he had the Native American background. And he said, Mom, I really just don't want to explain, and it's always an explanation, and I shouldn't feel that I have to do that. So I, made sure that this is an important part of you. You can't just put it to the side. It is part of you, a part of who you are and your family. And growing up, he as well was out in the powwow circle, and,
Great.
being exposed to the dancing and the crafts and the language. And my younger children are now being exposed to the language, which is very difficult to learn, even especially as an adult. But they have language classes at our tribal office, and they're getting involved with that, because I know it's part of them, and I don't want them to forget about that. It isn't fair to our ancestors that through the years that have had their they're fighting for our tribal rights as well. So it's definitely a part of us that we want to hold on to and continue to praise and look into. So
I commend you for continuing your legacy of your heritage, because some people just don't take the time to say, we're going to participate, we're going to continue this, and to share it with their children. And we are mixtures of different things, and as African Americans, we're sometimes so, well, this is what you are, but we have to embrace all sides and all aspects of who we are.
Absolutely.
And definitely, I think that's important for our kids. And even as educators, we have to have our students to go home and ask a lot of questions, because a lot of my students, they don't ask questions. And I think they miss out on that. Right. And I tell them, talk to their elders, talk to the oldest people in your family, and you'll learn a lot of different things.
Yeah, I know my son enjoys sitting with my my grandfather, his great-grandfather, and listening to his stories about when he was in war, and just, having that. He said, one day we'll miss that and not have that opportunity to sit down and learn about, how life was when he was a child, and, what was going on in the world at that point. So it definitely is, something that I feel like if all children could be exposed, it's such a great opportunity to have that.
Absolutely.
And I'm definitely blessed because I have a very big family.
Yes.
That we all look out for each other. We're always, very supportive in anything and everything that we do. So it's definitely, part of our makeup and how we continue.
That's perfect. I'm so grateful for that. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, what age level is this book recommended for?
This is definitely the K through third grade, kindergarten through third grade children age level. However, my publisher, just speaking with me in length, said that it could not necessarily only have to be geared towards that level, but it could be also in like a college course as far as teaching certain word choice that is used in the book, the onomatopoeia that is used in the book, as far as the sound words. And so just a way to kind of, show how a children's book could be laid out, and how it could reach the audience in different ways. So not only a child, but an adult learning to, become a teacher or a writer themselves. So.
Right. So you mentioned some of the language arts techniques, anecdotes, and you mentioned onomatopoeia, which is a poetic style, which I think is important. And, as I'm flipping through this book and you mentioned that, have you considered maybe a teacher's guide along with this book so that teachers could actually have the students to point out certain things, or if the teacher could point these things out and say, what did you notice? Mm-hmm. Of course, with the storm portion of it, I did notice, I really enjoyed the imagery of the storm. I'm trying to find it. Mm-hmm. This makes me feel so excited.
Yes.
So I'm sure that there's some onomatopoeia in this, and just as a recommendation, I think as a teacher,
that's definitely a possibility.
Yes.
I have my own children in my class that I've read the book to. They've actually picked up on the use of ellipses, like, so, bringing up the anticipated, climax or what's coming next. So, it's great to see them taking on that learning, not just enjoying the story, but looking at the grammar and the punctuation. And it could be definitely used as a teaching tool, and that's definitely something I would consider. My publisher actually mentioned coming up with a prequel, the story behind the scenes and how,
yes,
Anthony found the egg, and, so that's a possibility as well. So definitely can go different routes, and my journey can definitely continue with this published piece, so I'm excited.
I love that. That sounds great. I think you should definitely make the prequel. Prequel is such a cool thing,
Yes.
What happened before this particular story. I like that. So now, who is your publisher? What publishing company did you go through?
The publishing company that I went with is a small independent company. It's called First Ride Enterprises, and
Right.
it originated from two adults that were just talking over a drink one day and said, you know what, I think this is something that we would like to, further explore, because they had known publishing companies that were a lot bigger, and they wanted to make sure that there was a smaller company that people felt very comfortable with. It was more intimate, if you will, and so the two of them came up with this publishing company in 2012. So it's rather new. And they market to any newly published author that's holding on to something like I was, and not really ready to let it go because it was so sentimental to myself.
Yes.
So I reached out to them after hearing an author come into our school,
Mm-hmm.
who was part of their publishing company. And she gave me the contact information, and I just had to give them a little synopsis of the story, and they absolutely loved it and thought, this definitely
Mm-hmm.
would be something that should be out there. So
Yeah, I love that concept where your son, made you believe. And it's like, so these kids are way more clever,
very witty.
very witty, and he went along with it, and you went along with it.
I went with it.
And you guys were just playing off of each other's going along with it. I think that is
yes.
really adorable.
Yes.
And I was going to ask you, do you plan on writing more books? And I mean, even you're talking about a prequel. What about a sequel?
It's definitely a possibility. And like I said, I have this story, and it's all about a small moment with my oldest son. I also have two younger children that already are asking, when is their book coming? So I know my daughter
nice.
has lots of ideas, and I was thinking it would be a lot of fun if I actually teamed up with my daughter, because she has so many experiences in school and the things that she would like to see in books that may not be in the books that she's reading right now. So I was thinking more of like a young girls series. And my daughter has the title in her mind. She's like, Mom, it could be called Sassy Cece, and then have different adventures and, you know, different problems that may arise as a little girl going into the middle school. So I definitely, you know, have to include them at some point. So definitely 2 more books, because I have 2 more children that I feel like I have to. And actually on my robe, I have embroidered ARC, which stands for my firstborn, whose name's Anthony, my middle guy, his name is Ray, and my daughter Ciara. So I did include them in this book in a small touch of a way. So but I definitely enjoy writing. It's something that I, you know, one of my little, you know, things that I do is if I have something in mind, I could be driving, I'll pull over and put it in my phone, because it's something that I may want to include one day in a book. So it's just part of me, and I feel like I definitely will continue on this writing journey, because it's enjoyable.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely
Writing is enjoyable. Let me ask you, how long was the process of actually writing this book?
The whole process, well, the process of coming into play with the publisher was about 8 to 10 months. Based on, I would write, they would edit, they would give suggestions, I would have to accept the suggestions, or, you know, we would go back and forth, and then it went to layout, and there was so many different variables that were involved in creating a book, which you don't realize until you're doing it.
Yes.
Like, you know.
There's a lot.
So it was a lot of back and forth. And then my illustrator, who's amazing, she's very young. She just graduated high school. And she had an idea, and then we would kind of go back and forth. So sometimes that would, you know, make the process a little bit longer than, you know, it should have been, but it was definitely worth the wait. And now going through this, the next time around, I know what to expect, and I'm sure it won't be as long, but it was definitely an interesting process and fun to do, and very, very much a learning curve on my end. So.
Right, and I think what's really great is that your young illustrator was able to participate in this project, because, you know, she looks, the artwork looks very seasoned, and you know, I think that's important, because now she has a career as an illustrator.
Yes.
You know,
yes, she's out there.
Yeah, so now other people can call on her to actually maybe illustrate their books. And, you know, I think that's important.
Absolutely. I know she has a wonderful story to come, because she's amazing at this point. So I can only imagine where she'll end up. So.
Right. So now, where can we find this book?
This book is now on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble, online, and also Create Space. And I have that. That's on my First Ride Enterprises. If you go on the First Ride Enterprise webpage, you can find it on their Create Space as well. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and, you know, it's also on Kindle. So that would be another avenue to explore now that we're in the digital technology world.
Right. I think that's great, because I always see babies in strollers, and they are looking at cell phones and watching videos, and I'm like, but they might lock that phone up, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm like, but these little kids, you never know when they're looking at these phones, all the things that they can learn. So I'm glad that you have the accessibility on these various platforms, and that, you know, Barnes & Noble. I love Barnes & Noble. I have an addiction to that place.
Oh, my daughter as well. She wants to go there, which I love. I love the fact that she's still, you know, she's my reader. She definitely is my reader, so she enjoys that.
Yes.
spending the day there.
Absolutely. So, what would you like to say to other parents or educators who have stories inside of them and, maybe need a little more encouragement, or maybe they may say, oh, I don't know if anybody else would care about that story?
Yeah. Well, I have to say it took me many years to let go, and it is something that is special to you, but if you feel strongly enough about it, you should definitely explore the avenues. And, it kind of fell into my lap because I, would talk about it. I would touch base with different publishers, and it's something that if you have this moment in your life or an experience that you want to share, it's definitely an idea, and you have to start somewhere. And that's, I always talk to my students about, they have a seed idea, they can turn it into a watermelon. You have to, really push yourself and, go for what you want, and you never know. The world's, open, and it could be something to pass on from generation to generation. So
absolutely.
And it is never too late, never too late.
Right. And we have to follow through. Sometimes we have these great ideas, and we have to take the time to figure out the process, because I am a co-author of a parenting book, and it was a process. In theory, we knew what to do because we had been looking into things, and some of us were already published, like with journals and other things. But to write your own book, there's not one way to do it. There's so many avenues,
Right.
because we basically self-published, and when it's time to print, we go and we print at the printer, and we don't have to worry about,
Any middleman.
anything like that. So it works well. We were able to reach out, there are 4 of us, and with all of our resources and all of our connections, we were able to make everything happen.
And you can. That's
Yeah.
definitely the way to go if you can do it.
Right?
I agree.
So, Kelly, I just want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
It's exciting.
And I would love for everyone to go out and pick up a copy of Miracle by Kelly O'Blennis Henry. Again, I am your host, Sharonda Allen. Thank you for tuning in to We the Village.